Amen.
Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from all guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed through pure water, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. For he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some have the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more you see the day approaching. Father, as we celebrated and worship you with the tongues of angels that only heard in heaven and on earth, Father, I ask that you will spur us on, that you will give us boldness, that you will give us confidence, holding unswervingly to the hope we profess. Let's sit down. So we have been going through the book of Hebrews. We looked at the situation that we reckon it was written into. It was written into a pre-AD 70. AD 70, the time when the temple was destroyed. So in the kind of few years running up to that, where persecution of Christians was going on kind of day and night. Not a good place to be, not a good place to be a Christian. What we know from the advice written by, we're not quite sure who, but we definitely know it wasn't Paul, but it might have been someone called Apollos. The advice given was to hold unswervingly to God. We know also that this Christian community was being hit from all sides and being persecuted, but at the same time people were just giving up hope and walking off. We also know that this writer wanted to kind of go, look, there are things out there that are big and scary. But there's one person who's bigger and scarier than the lot of them, and that is Jesus. What we've also found over the weeks is there is two different types of priesthood. We have the priesthood of descent that goes way back to in the Old Testament, where Levi was given the job to set up his family as a priestly tribe. And it went down father to son all the way through the Bible. There was various kind of things going on in between, disagreements and sidelines on that, but we're not interested in that kind of stuff. It just went through the family, father to son, father to son, father to son, the priesthood of descent. But we also found out there was another type of priesthood, the priesthood that was the original vision of the people of God, that they were going to be a priestly nation, not just a priestly family that passed through generation to generation. The original vision was for everybody to be priests. And there's this character who we learnt about a few weeks ago called Melchizedek, who kind of came in, I nearly used a word there that would have just been a nightmare, but he came into the story in Genesis and then left, who then was referred to in Psalm 110, and then in Hebrews again talked about quite a lot. Melchizedek, this guy who we pretty much quite easily see before the Levitical priesthood was set up, we see acting as a priest, which is slightly problematic. If priesthood started in Genesis, if priesthood started in Exodus, and we have somebody turning up in Genesis, there's a problem. Because where did this priest come from? And this priest also not only acted as a priest, he gave really odd presents. Not the kind of odd we had a family member who shall remain nameless, used to give really odd presents. Used to kind of open them up, and the one year I can remember we got well, it was the 70s. Come on, but it was kind of fake marble plastic bathroom set. So it was like you got the cup, you got the toothbrush holder, you got the little dish to put the soap on. You had one, didn't you? And we had the whole set, but it wasn't, not that in itself was odd, but everyone in our family got given a different bit. So my brother got the toothbrush holder, my mum got the soap dish holder, I got the cup. And I'm not sharing with anybody. So this kind of fake marble plastic cup set was the oddest present I think I've ever been given. But it's not, because I just remembered an odder one. which is more my fault than my wife's fault. My last birthday that went in September, I came down to, I got up a bit late because it's my birthday, it's the law, and I came downstairs and there was a card on the box in the middle of the room. She'd already gone to work, opened it up and went, card, no present. Gutted. So I'm like, I'm being taken advantage of as the head of this household. I'm being mocked by my wife. Just been given a card. She gets home about 6 o'clock. Do you like your present? I went, huh. What? She went, what? She went, didn't you read the card? I'm like, well, no, it's a card. It'll just say happy birthday, won't it? No, the explanation of the present is in the card. So I got in trouble on my birthday. It was a nice present after all, but it was odd. But anyway, where were we? Odd presents, that was it. Melchizedek. And he turns up and he acts as a priest. Abraham treats him as a priest and he brings a present and a gift of bread and wine. Which, if we look then at the Psalm 110, he's talked of again. Psalm 110, I think I'm right in saying Psalm 110 is the most quoted psalm in the New Testament. And actually, the Psalm 110, which is a messianic psalm, points towards Melchizedek. And then we have in Hebrews, Melchizedek is picked up again and talked about that Jesus is a high priest in the order of Melchizedek. A priesthood that doesn't go down Father to Son, Father to Son, Father to Son, but comes from a different place, from above. And then over the week we have looked at, if my stick stay in the right place, we have looked at 1 Peter 2, where it says, as you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood. We are a holy priesthood that comes down not through Father to Son, but through Jesus. And again, if we just jump to Revelation and a verse there, you have been made, you have made them into a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on earth. So we have this wonderful narrative going throughout the whole Bible that actually the original vision is everybody to be priests. And we as Christians embrace that reality, and we are priests. It's interesting, as you know, I'm doing this study, and part of it is looking at church history, which I've never been that excited about. But I've been reading bits about the Reformation and about how the Reformation put the Bible into the hands of the common people. It wasn't just a Reformation about Henry VIII wanting to marry someone else. That kind of was part of it. But actually, through the Reformation also, the Bible was translated into English. That actually suddenly we had the common folk, not the vicar or the priest, the common folk being able to read from the Bible, which is amazing and transformative. But as part of that, as the good Protestants we are, we kind of pushed on one side the idea of priesthood. We don't like it because that's what they do over there. We had the Reformation, so we don't have to do priesthood. But actually, last week we saw that actually sacrifices come to an end on the Day of Atonement and Jesus dying on the cross and rising from the dead. But the idea of us being a priest for the kingdom on earth hasn't gone. Let's just read again that passage I read at the beginning, page 1208, Hebrews chapter 10. Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with sincere heart and the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised to be faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus. Okay, what's the most holy place, anybody? Temple. And in particular, the Holy of Holies. Now, I did a quick search, and I'm not doing this to mock. I'm doing this to kind of realize that within Jewish faith, there's lots of things you've got to do before you go somewhere. And this is just the synagogue's guide. Now, as a parallel to this, in the Church of England, we have unwritten rules on what you can do and what you can't do. You just find out if you break them. You don't, like, apparently you're supposed to ring a bell before a service. Who knew? We've been breaking that rule for 27 years here at Oak Tree because we've not got a bell. But anyway, we have unwritten rules. When you go to synagogues, there are rules on entering a synagogue, let alone the temple. When you enter a traditional synagogue, put on a yarmulke, that's the hat on your head, if you are male. Supplies kept at the back. And keep it on even during the Kiddush or the meal that follows. On some occasions following the Kiddush, there will be a lunch to which guests of the bar mitzvah are invited. Don't automatically assume that if you've been to the service, you're invited to the lunch. However, you're usually invited to the Kiddush, which is like the blessing. And then the no carry principle in a traditional synagogue on Shabbat, by extension, don't bring a pocket, handbag, suitcase, briefcase, or tape recorder. So don't bring any of those because you'll be breaking rules. An extension of the no money principle is the don't jangle your change in the pocket if you're bored rule. And so it goes on. 2 pages of guidelines. If you read on the Day of Atonement with the high priest going into the Holy of Holies, he has to do 72 different actions, prayers and ablutions before he gets anywhere near the Holy of Holies. And when he gets, one of the process things he has to do is to tie a red rope either around his arm or around his waist. The idea being that if he collapses in the presence of God, there's a red rope that comes out of the Holy of Holies that all the other priests can pull him out on, so he's not left in there. The holy place is a place that takes ages to get into. And as I said, we've got our own unwritten rules. But in this passage in Hebrews, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, that means no ablutions. That means we can go anytime, anywhere, whether we're disabled or abled, to all areas. We can go in. Whether we give a lot or whether we give nothing, we can go into that holy place. Priests can go into the Holy of Holies once a year, with all the different prayers and oblations, different outfits, songs and ceremony, and the red rope. But we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus. Let's not write off the idea of priestliness. Let's embrace it, of who we are and what we are. We have a job description. We need to work it out in our own eventuality to be that prayerful person, to be the person, the priest that stands between the person stood in front of you and the God that is within you. We need to look to our own holiness. We need to speak into people's lives with love and with care. We need to make that stand and do that brave thing like we bravely sang, without words, with odd words. We sometimes need to pray for healing for people, for God's kingdom to be here and now. The job description of priesthood isn't dropped because Jesus died and rose on the cross. It is there, stark and simple, goes through the whole Bible, goes through church history. We've made a mess of it, we've confused it, we've dropped it, we've picked it up again. But we have a role to do, whoever we are, whatever we are. If we profess to be Christians, our call is to be that bridge between humanity and God. Holiness, prayerfulness, to be prophetic, and to call for people for healing. This is our priestly job, that we can boldly walk into the presence of God and then walk back out again, still in the presence of God, still operating as a priest, without the need for a red rope to drag us back out again. This is our call, to be priests of the most high priest, Jesus himself. We've got one final song which Carolyn is going to explain how we're going to do it. It was sung once or twice. It's a beautiful song, speaks right into the challenge of this situation of where we're coming into land with Hebrews. But I'll just hand over to Carolyn now and she can do it from that point.